Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lawtech Connect on Litera TV. I'm excited to be back in action, and my name is Adriana Linares. I'm a legal technology trainer and consultant. And on Lawtech Connect, I like to focus on lawyers that have very cool niche. This is an argument we have almost every episode, niche practices. And I'm excited to introduce Joseph Fried to everyone. Hey, Joseph.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Do you go by Joe?
I go by Joe, please.
Yeah, you don't seem like a Joseph. You seem much more chill than a Joseph. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. And I want to make sure and thank Renee Stackhouse, my dear friend, who's the president of the San Diego County Bar Association, for introducing us when I reached out to her and said, I know you know lawyers that have cool practices. You were one of the first ones that came to mind. She said, my friend, Joe Fried, does trucking cases. And I said, just stop right there. I've never heard of a trucking lawyer. I'm on it. So tell me a little bit about your practice and how you got into it.
Well, I mean, first of all, I love Renee. And shout out to you, Renee, for everything that you do, not only have done that's affected me positively, but you do so much for the legal world. And I'm so
She's amazing. She's a woman making history.
She's awesome. So my practice for the last, 14, 15 years now, I have focused on a niche area having to do with commercial motor vehicle crashes. So think big truck crashes. I was sort of early in this space and got laughed at a lot early on for being too niche.
For having a dream?
For having a dream, yeah. It was weird because I had done other things. I was a med mal lawyer, and then I was a certain kind of product liability lawyer. And then through a kind of a weird set of circumstances, when I say product liability, I literally focused on sort of the modern equivalent of the Pinto case.
Tell us more.
Get hit from behind, the car catches fire. It was a survivable crash, but terrible injuries because of a fire.
Wow.
And I happened into a case like that. Actually, my first case was out of your hometown of Orlando. The woman was from Orlando, and I'll never forget her. She was in a wreck that, as her doctor said, wasn't bad enough to break her fingernail, but she ended up burning in her car, and it was horrible.
Terrible. Oh my God.
It consumed me. I dropped everything else, and that's really where I became a niche lawyer because I didn't set out to be, but I looked around a few years later and I realized all I'm doing are these post-collision fire cases, and I'm doing them all across the United States, and I'm speaking about them and I'm living them, and I can't not close my eyes and see them. And it was really sickness.
I see collision cases everywhere.
Yeah. I would see people driving down the road in a beautiful Mustang, and I'd go, oh my gosh. And I would see it like, it was crazy. It was a sickness, but
wow.
I as a kind of a baby lawyer from Atlanta, I kept saying to Ford, if you change the design, I'll quit suing you. And they're like, yeah, whatever.
You young whippersnapper, you can't tell us how to design a car.
They weren't worried about me because they had other bigger issues in their mind. That at the time they were dealing with the Firestone tire situation way back when, and all that kind of stuff. But then later on, after some success in those cases, they did decide to change the design, and they called me up and basically said, "You remember when you said?" Yeah. Well, they came down. We settled all of our cases, and I woke up. I had no cases, so I floundered around for about a year to try to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And then for a few weeks, really leading up to a particular day, it seemed like everywhere I turned, it was a truck crash. I turned the news on, and it was a terrible truck crash. I'd open the newspaper, and it's a truck crash. I even got on an airplane, and somebody had left a trucking industry specific magazine open to a safety problem in the seat pocket in front of me. And I'm
way.
Really?
The universe really speaks to you.
Yeah, it was.
That's amazing.
And so a few days after that, I was tossing and turning in bed at about 3:00 in the morning. What are you going to be when you grow up? Well, I think I'm supposed to be a truck crash lawyer. Well, I've never heard of that. Nobody will refer cases like that. When when you're automobile product liability lawyer, people are happy to send you cases. Or if you're a medical malpractice lawyer, which is what I did initially, people are happy to send you cases. So my whole marketing has always been lawyer to lawyer, kind of things. But then I'm thinking truck cases, people will never refer me a truck case. They won't see it as different enough. And it was this whole, back and forth in my mind, but I decided I would do it. It was 3:00 in the morning. I woke up the next morning, really full of energy for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
Went to my office to wait for my then one employee to come in so I could tell her about this latest midlife crisis of what I was going to do. And the phone rang. Because the problem was, the problem with being a truck crash lawyer at the time is I had no truck crash cases.
Yet.
So that first morning, literally, I'm waiting for Judy to get in so I could tell her what my idea is. And I was taking myself off of all these boards that I had gotten myself put onto as a product liability lawyer. I was sending messages to people saying, I went to sleep last night at, product liability lawyer, but I woke up this morning a truck crash lawyer. And about 8:15 in the morning, the phone rings. I pick it up. Lady asks for me by name. And I said, how can I help you? And she said, well, at about 3:00 this morning, my husband was killed. I'm so sorry. What happened? It turned out that it was a truck crash case.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah, so it was crazy. And that was in November, just a little bit before Thanksgiving. And by the end of that year, so just a few more weeks later, I had 4 truck death cases. So it became my life. And like what happened with fuel tank cases, I knew for me as a niche lawyer, it was going to be about becoming the best that I could be in that area and really becoming a subject matter expert. And that's what I think of when I think of a niche practice.
Sure.
Because you're a great lawyer, hopefully, but you're also really become a subject matter expert in a topic. And,
now, you mentioned early on when we were in the green room, as I like to call it, that, when we were chatting before, that you were a physics major. Is that right?
I was just before I decided to go to law school. So you can imagine what my electives look like.
Right.
Electives that people can't pronounce.
Right. But, and so I guess what I'm saying is, on top of having the legal experience and understanding the law, you were able then to maybe blend some of that physics education into your practice. Is that part of how you were able to say to Ford, if you move that fuel tank, or was that just training through learning about how cars are designed and what causes the accidents and the fires?
That's a great question. I was that kid growing up. My mom would say I was the kid who took everything apart and sometimes put it back together again, but I was always that kid trying to figure out how things worked. And I was a police officer for 6 years. And I
also interesting.
Lots of wrecks. So I was always interested in the dynamics of how things happen. And
sure.
Physics is really applied dynamics. It's a lot applied mathematics. So it's about explaining with math, what happens, at least in the context that we're talking about. So it all that stuff definitely colored my interest. And when I looked at it initially in the car side, when I looked at this car and I'm like this burnt up carcass of a Mustang, but when I looked at the actual physical damage, other than it looking like crap because it was burnt, it's like, why the hell did this thing catch fire? The wreck's not that bad.
Interesting.
And,
right.
and I remember even pulling the record driver over and saying, why did this thing burn up? Look at the impact.
Huh.
And he said, it's a Mustang. And I was like, what do you mean? And so I started looking.
Interesting.
A bunch of those cases. So that was the origin of it. Now I get to apply a lot of the same things that I learned. I credit Ford Motor Company for helping make me a better lawyer.
That's amazing.
Now I get to apply a lot of what I learned about automotive design and structural design for vehicles in what I do now in the truck crash world. So understanding how the crashes happen, understanding sort of the forces that are involved and how it all comes together.
Right.
Has served me really well as a lawyer.
That's really interesting. Side weird question, because I have those in my head sometimes. What kind of car do you drive?
what day?
Oh, on the day that you don't want to get in an accident, but if you do, you're going to feel really safe inside.
So I have a few cars. I have today I drove a new Corvette.
Beautiful.
Which normally I'm not the Corvette guy, but I'm in love with this new body Corvette.
Hey, Corvette. Joe, every guy is a Corvette guy.
I know. I told somebody yesterday, it lets me be the high school kid I always wanted and dreamed to be, but could never be. But I kind of go through cars. Cars are kind of my thing. So
I like that. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Totally sidetracked. Okay. I'm in the market for a new car, and I'm looking at a Chrysler Pacifica. Yes, I know that's hilarious. I'm not married. I do not have kids, but man, I love a luxury ride with space. So you can tell me your opinion on that car later.
Well, we can talk about it. Great.
Let's go back to your practice.
He was driving a convertible for some reason, but
I know. And in the South, I should have a convertible. I do have a 30-year-old Jeep Wrangler that I can take. Yeah, it's a great, fun car. And actually, it's 32 now. I need to give it the credit it deserves. It wears an antique plate in Florida. It's a cool old Jeep, and I take the top off of that. Yeah, let's go back to your practice. So you got this call, you heard the universe say, I'm trucking lawyer, I am.
Yeah.
And then cases started coming your way. And I suppose, I'm going to guess, you probably don't do a lot of marketing and advertising. You probably get a lot of cases by word of mouth at this point. Is that true? And how long did it take for that to happen?
It took really not that long. So I had developed a national practice through the work that I'd done as a product lawyer. But another sort of story on that front is, when I was a baby lawyer, I remember being in a room, like sea of lawyer heads, dark.
I've been in those.
And I remember suddenly feeling really small and looking around and going, how the hell am I going to be anything?
Oh man. I hate those moments.
Yeah. But, you look around and you go, life, this whole concept of equality, we could have some really interesting talks about it because
it
starts out equal. I mean, there were some great things for me. I'm not, whatever. I'm not, dissing anything. But I'd look around and I'm like, that guy is a fourth generation lawyer. That person is, that's the daughter of the former governor. That person has $1 billion verdict. I mean, I wouldn't, if a case comes in, I wouldn't hire me. I'd hire that. But how am I going to be anything? And about that same time, somebody, I think you're going to appreciate this with the expertise that you have. Somebody came to me and said, what does it take to be an expert in something?
Yeah.
And I said, a PhD and 25 years of life experience. And they said, yeah, that's all important, but not really. What's really important is you have to write something that's somewhat scholarly. And then you have to be asked by your peers to present. And once you take the stage and you start to present, and by God, they're looking at you as an expert in that area. It might be this big and this wide, but you're an expert in this big and this wide.
And sometimes that's all you need.
That's right. And so that made sense to my baby lawyer brain. And I went down to the continuing education office. And I said, who runs this damn thing? And I said, put me on the committee. I'll be a worker bee. And I learned very early in my career the power of being a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
What that could mean to you, both. Frankly, I mean, it serves my ego in a lot of ways. Also, maybe I shouldn't admit that on this.
It's bold of you that you can.
But what it really did is it taught me that if I become a subject matter expert in something, that I can really truly offer no BS, no false leader thing but if I could really present something to people who frankly might be better lawyers than me, but if I can become the subject matter expert to give them something that they don't have, then my value in the world of being a lawyer goes up. And
so true.
I learned how to be a teacher, and I learned how the continuing education world worked in law. Sure. And even today, here we're on this call. I'm teaching sometimes 2 or 3 times a week.
Huh.
So I do 50 to 100 presentations a year to lawyer groups.
That's amazing.
And so what happened, I'll teach. I've probably already, it's the beginning of March. I've probably already done 20 trucking programs this year, where I have spoken to trial lawyer groups around the country, to industry groups around the country, to safety groups around the country. When we get off of this, I'm meeting with one of the premier safety people who's in DC, a small committee of people on some on some things. So so that's the way I develop my practice, is by going around, and really my intention is to raise the bar in how cases are handled. And I don't worry about whether somebody's going to bring me into a case or not. Thankfully, I've got plenty.
Yeah.
I just believe that if your intention is to do good and to help other people, everything else will take care of itself. And so my sort of instruction to myself every morning is, what can I give today? And I try to give fully and completely without an ulterior motive of marketing, but it does end up
right.
It's easy to do that once you know that you don't have to have the ulterior motive. So I don't want to sound overly altruistic here, because it used to be, I'm doing this so I could get a daggum case.
Right.
Now I'm doing it, and thankfully I'm in a position where I get to say no to most of the things I'm offered. But that's a very different place in life.
Well, it sounds like, it's the same for me all the time. I love training, teaching, speaking. And when I'm doing that, I am the expert. I never stop learning one thing or another, it's just amazing. So for me, training and teaching is my way of constantly learning. And people say to me all the time, "Oh, I have a dumb question to ask you." And often I know the answer, but when I don't, those are my happiest moments. I'm like, I don't know the answer to that one, but let me go figure it out.
When you ask that to me tomorrow, I'll know it.
I'm going to go figure it out, and we'll come back and I'll know for the next time. So when somebody starts with, this might be a dumb question, it's usually what gets me excited, because it's probably not.
Well, I totally agree with that. I just yesterday in the afternoon, I spent a few hours working with some other lawyers on some cases, and my confession then was, I always learn more than I give.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm open to the idea that I can. The other thing, since it's full confession day here on your program,
I like it.
I think it took me a while to become comfortable enough in to be able to say I don't know.
Yes.
What I mean by that, because at first, early.
Totally. Oh man, that is such a hard thing. I think for all of us to learn.
Well, because you feel less than, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I'm supposed to be the expert here. If I say I don't know, what will people think of me?
Right.
Really, the best folks are eager to say, like you said, they're eager to say, you know what, I have no friggin' idea. But you know what? I know how to find out.
Right.
And if you give me a little bit of time, I am super motivated to find out. And I can bring, this other skill set with me as I go find it out. So
totally.
I think that, I say that because it's been an evolution in my life, because I used to not be able to, I would, it would be really hard for me to ever say I don't know, because of that underlying, sharing my whole psychology or lack thereof. But I think it's important for people to know. I want people who are listening to this to know that it's perfectly okay.
It's okay not to know.
Say, I don't know. In fact, it's a stronger response than if you give a BS response and try to fill it in later, which was my former self.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it all comes with age and experience. When you're young, we're just sometimes just making our way.
Yeah. Some people do lots of 2x4s like me up to the side of the head, to get there. Yes.
I bet you're a great person to work for. You obviously mentor and teach, and you probably do a lot of that within the confines of your own office. How have you grown your office from being that solo to, was it Judy
Judy, yeah.
Judy, you and Judy. And then that was a long time ago. So how many lawyers do you have now? And what's...
Right. 9 lawyers.
Wow.
The support staff in the 20 range. And then I'm part of another law firm in North Florida in Jacksonville that I'm a partner in, and I mentor that whole office. So a lot of my life now has really been shifting from, I'm really blessed in that I can choose between lots of different things to do. So I choose cases. Most of them are big cases, but big doesn't necessarily mean money big. Big means that they've gripped my heart for whatever reason. And so that I'm trying to make more and more room in my life. I've always had the room about teaching, but now my intent now is to bring up an army of people who know how to do what I've learned how to do. And so that's part of the teaching, but it's also part of developing internally. And I've got some awesome younger lawyers who, phenomenal support staff. I'm so proud of them, and they make me look good every day. And I try to make them look good every day. So it's a dance, but I think to answer your question wouldn't be complete if I left out the idea that's gotta be, you gotta bring, as a lawyer, you gotta bring intention to that part of your life, because otherwise what happens is the best idea, the best intention, life gets in the way.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
At some point I had to say, I'm going to carve out and really make it a priority to develop this person. And that means that I'm not going to allow the situation to occur where I give that person a project and they come back to me with a question and I just say, well, just give it back to me, right? Which a lot of times I could do it a lot faster and maybe even better. Right. But if I do that, I've stolen from that person the ability to become self-sufficient, become better. And so it's a different skill set. Being a great lawyer does not really equate to being a great trainer.
So true.
And
so true.
You see it in what you do all the time, right?
I do. Yeah. It's one of the biggest complaints in the profession is a lack of mentoring. And it's true. And it's sad, because if there's anything a young lawyer needs, and even not young lawyers, I mean, I feel like we all need mentoring as our skill set develops, and, we just need different type of mentoring as we get more experienced and become.
You are my new best friend, because we are hitting on all cylinders. I so agree with that idea of, iron sharpening iron kind of a thing. This life is not a solo sport.
It's not.
You got to put people in your life who are going to challenge you. I tell my people all the time, don't be a yes person. Please don't be a yes person because you think I want to hear yes. I don't. Maybe I do. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I do want to hear it.
Or I think I do. Right.
I need to hear no, but I want to hear yes. But I need you to challenge me. And so we have to come up with a language and a process that's permissive, that allows that, encourages it.
That's interesting.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal to be able to do that.
How did you figure all this out, to this sort of methodology and way of thinking? Did you do a lot of reading? Did you get properly mentored? Did you read a book that changed your life? Or was it just a little bit of everything? And probably being a parent has a lot of impact on the way you see the world once you become a parent. I wouldn't know, I don't have kids, but I hear this a lot.
You want a few? I'll send a few your way.
No, Joe, I'm like this on purpose.
So I don't know, what I'll tell you is the biggest lessons I've learned are the ones that have come from some kind of a painful experience. I hate to say it that way and get serious for a minute, but you learn because you think your intentions are good, and then you figure out that you're screwing something up, and you figure out down the road that you had an ulterior agenda that you didn't even really know. I mean, like a big part of my life has been trying to bring intentionality and into kind of where I am. It started, frankly, with the Trial Lawyers College, and maybe even before that, it's where I met Renee. And
I knew it as soon as you said that. And I meant to ask you, she seems to meet a lot of really amazing people at that trial. What is it? Trial lawyers. That's a mouthful. And it comes up a lot on this show when I interview people. A lot of them are, because of Renee, but also not. And it's very interesting. And Eric Ganchi, you must know him through there. I have him doing a very mini mentoring series on my podcast. And I have similar conversations with him about he loves what he does, but he loves teaching and he loves sharing his knowledge. And it's just, he's a teacher, and it's hard to say to a lawyer sometimes, hey, you're not just a lawyer, you're a teacher. They don't like hearing that. But when I meet those types of lawyers, I'm always inspired by them. And I'm so glad that they exist in the profession.
Yeah, I think though, honestly, even beyond what in the context that you're talking about, I actually think the right posture for a trial lawyer, there's different lawyers who do different things.
Yeah.
The posture of being a trial lawyer, standing in front of other people, I think the best posture is the posture of teacher. When you think about a trial.
Yeah, so true. Right.
Who has credibility? Who did you grow up with looking at as somebody who had information that's worthy maybe of listening to every now and then, whatever. But, when you think about it, do you think people are going to listen to a lawyer or a teacher? Right.
So true.
So there's a lot to what we're talking about here. And, I think that, the reality is, there's all kinds of sayings about you don't really have anything until you give it away, all those kind of things. And that's what teaching is to me. And it sharpens the edge all the time. Like you said earlier, it keeps you learning because you have to. And
you want to.
Yeah, you want to. You want to be able to put it out there. And it does also serve ego.
Sure. I guess so. Yeah.
It's not, if you get accolades and, like I wish I could sing the song that people would clap when I got done singing. I can't do that, but I can go speak about some esoteric trucking topic and people will clap. So it's whatever that is, whatever that need is, to get a pat on the back of some kind, to know that you did some good, that you left something good out there.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Well, Joe, you're a really special attorney, and I'm so glad we met. And I'm going to text Renee as soon as we're done and thank her for sending you my way, because
you will wake her up.
It's true. Actually, I don't know.
She's probably already been up for just looking at the watch and saying,
you cannot do all the things Renee Stackhouse crams into a day by sleeping in. So
not sleeping in.
Tell everyone where they can find friend or follow you or learn more about you and your practice.
The best way to find me is you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. But really, if you want anything from me, just pick up the phone, call my cell phone, and I put that out there in the world. The number is 404-429-6677. And I mean it when I say if I can do something that meaningfully improves your existence, I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to try to do that. So thanks so much for the time we had together. I wish we had more. I feel like we could go
Me
on
too. This has been the highlight of my week. Talking to you.
The highlight of your day. Well, hell, it's
not yet.
In the morning.
It's 8 here. So, and I mean it. I know this will have been the highlight of my week, and I really appreciate your time, Joe. You're awesome. And I
can never do anything. And you and I are going to have a talk about the other stuff that you do when you're not doing all of this.
I'd love to help.
Because I know how important that is, and that's an area of my practice that needs to be brought into the modern age. So
I like to say that I help law firms move from being Fred Flintstone's law firm to George Jetson's law firm.
Yeah,
so we could.
But I don't believe in coincidences. So the reason that you and I are together on this might all be just because I needed a new technology advisement person. And so here we are.
Here we are.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.